So with regard to ePermits, we're going to run a very simple scenario here. We'll use the example that we saw in the previous work. So we're going to get a company to come in and do some work, do some hot works in a confined space. So as a contractor, so I'm now taking the role of the contractor. I am supposed to create for you a permit request, and the system will do all these checks. So first thing I want to do is I need to create a request. Don't worry about the graphic on the screen at the moment. I'll explain that better when it comes to looking at your tasks as an approver. But my simple task as the contractor is to create a request. And first of all, which site am I coming on to do this? So the company has got, in this instance, 6 different sites. I'm coming on to work on one of those sites. And the only sites that appear in this list are the ones that I'm approved to work on. So I'm coming in to work in data centers and offices. The next step is who am I actually coming in to do the work for? In some companies, you may have split responsibility. So in this instance, for example, Data Center Limited, they manage all of the work and maintenance work for the catering department, the data center, and the IT department. But everything else they outsource to an FM company. In addition, you could have tenants who are on board. This happens a lot, particularly in the retail sector, where a lot of the concessions are actually deemed as tenants, and they may bring in their own contractors to do refits and so on. It's very important that everybody is aware of everything that's going on the site. But I'm going to come in, I'm going to do the work for the FM company. So now I'm in a position where I need to start filling in some simple questions. I've got 6 simple questions I need to fill in. Who and when, and then what, why, where, and how. So the first thing, if I have a work order number, I can fill in my work order number on the sheet. This is me. This is my company, Specialist Contractor. We're the guys coming in to do the work. And I'm going to send a competent person. So I've already told ePermits who my staff that come out and actually do work are. And these are the ones list that are deemed as competent people. So I'm going to choose a chap called Steve, and there's his contact details appear on the screen. And I'm going to send this chap along as well called Richard, and we're going to add him to the list. So I'm sending a team of 2 people to do this work. If you have a security requirement where you need things like registration numbers put in, you can add in registration numbers, and these will appear on the permit as well, which is useful for the security guard so they can actually see that it's the right vehicle that's turning up on site. So the next question then is when are we going to do the work? So let's say we're going to do the work on Friday. No, let's say Thursday the 2nd. I'm going to start at 9 o'clock. We'll finish on the same day. And finish time will be 5 o'clock. Now, the system does understand shift patterns, for example. So if I was putting in someone in lone working and I was going to be working till 7 in the evening, the system may have rules in there that says we do not allow lone working after 5 p.m. Or it might have a soft rule that says we will allow it, but we need to flag up to our own technical team that we need to take some additional safety precautions to ensure the contractor is safe while they're on site after hours. I go to the next step. Now we're talking about what it is that we're going to do. Now, as a contractor, I've submitted to you in the past a number of different RAMs for different types of work that I do for you. All of these fields are interactive. So if I go through this in a more logical process, I'm coming in to do work on your air conditioning heating. I'm going to be doing some repair work. I'm going to be welding a plate. And now, which area am I going to do it? When we construct the model in ePermits of your building, we actually understand where things are. So a building consists of, at the top level, the building itself. The next level down is what we call zones, which are typically floors or the outside fabric or car parts. The next level down, what we call locations, plant rooms, dry risers, lift shafts, offices, electrical rooms, and then finally we've got services. So we really need to know exactly where services are. So in this instance, air conditioning is only identified in that matrix as being in one of these 3 levels. So I'm coming in to do the work on the roof upper level. And why is the work going to be done? It's a building services fault. Now, further down the screen, I have got a list of additional risks that may be involved. You'll notice here that asbestos has already been flagged on the system. When we build the system, if you have asbestos present, we can log where asbestos is. So therefore, anyone that's going to come in to do work, and in this instance, in the roof upper level, there is asbestos in that area, it flags it up. And as a contractor, I can't do anything about removing that. It flags it up, and I can then use it to go and see things like registers, asbestos registers, and so forth. So I'm going to be working in a confined space, some welding and brazing. These are the only RAMs now that I've submitted to you that you have approved for doing anything to do with your air conditioning. And here's one for welding steel boiler panels. So I can select that. And we now have got to a point where we can now go to next step. Now, the first thing that flags up is that there are a number of issues with this permit request that I'm trying to put together. We've got a green indicator here that says Richard De Silva's site induction has expired. Now, a green one is not a hard block. A green one will still allow a permit request to be submitted, but it will flag up on that permit request that this person needs to have his site induction completed before the work is allowed to start. And it will push you through a process when I turn up if I haven't done it. Second level we've got here is an amber warning, and this is showing that there is insufficient lead time of 3 days. In my demonstration system, I put in a block that says permits shouldn't be allowed to be requested less than 3 days before the work is due. Again, this is a soft block. I may look at the permit request at the other end when it comes through to me and say, actually, 3 days, I'd be happy if he could actually do it within 3 days. That will really help us. So I can then go ahead and approve it, but I am warned about that. However, you'll see at the bottom of the screen I have a grey submit button. I can't submit this permit request. So as a contractor, I can't even come in to come and tell you I want to do the work because I have got problems. And the problems are these red issues. I must have at least 2 persons trained in hot works. That's one of your rules. Any hot works done, a minimum of 2 trained people must be on site, and everybody must be trained in working in confined spaces. So if I go back to my list, the reason is this guy's got no training at all. But what I've just done is actually shown you how the system tracks the compliance side of things. So I've changed it now to a team worker that I know does have all the relevant qualifications. Everything else stays the same. And then when I go through the process, we now have got a red submit button. So that request is now compliant. If I was going to be doing any asbestos work, I can decide if I'm going to disturb it. If I do, I can also read the asbestos register and so forth. So there's plenty of things that I can do. But I'm now happy. I'm going to submit that permit request. I have a situation now where this is my my permit request, 9 till 5 on Thursday the 2nd of November. I'm looking at confined space request. Yes, I'm going to require that for the whole period of time. My hot works is only going to be a certain amount of time. So hot works, I'm doing it on that day. We're going to do the hot works between 1 and, let's say, on the same day, 3. So I save that, and we've now got our permit requests put together, and now I can submit. So I've now submitted my permit request. It's gone, and an email will appear in the inboxes of all the relevant people that need to approve those permits that are coming through. So I'm now going to log on as one of the permit approvers. This is a chap called Howard. And there at the bottom right-hand side, you can see there's the email link that has come through to me to tell me that the permits are awaiting approval. I log into the system as an approver, and I could have logged in just from the link if necessary. And this now shows me the permit lifecycle. This is the view of the world of my team that tells me all the things that I've got awaiting action. So I haven't got any RAMs awaiting approval. I've actually created some draft requests myself, so I may be, for example, requesting an isolation. Here are my requests awaiting approval. I've got 3 permits awaiting approval. So I can select that, and it now shows me these 3 permits. They've come in from a company called Specialist Contractor. They're for work that's to be done on Thursday, the 2nd of November, and each one has an individual number, but you'll notice they're all nested together. So I have a permit bundle. I can view those permit requests. So one of the first things that comes up on the screen is I can now see that I've actually got some potential clashes on here. I've got someone coming in to do work in the same location, and it shows me all the relevant permits in there, and I can actually click on these and I can go and view those permits. So I can make a decision, is this job that's being requested more important than the one that maybe has already been approved? If that is the case, then I can bounce whichever one that I believe needs bouncing, because even though I might have approved permits, I can still bounce them and then get them reissued. We've got no dependent services clash. A dependent service is, for example, I might need to have the water on, whereas someone else needs the water off. So the 2 jobs are mutually exclusive, and I again have to decide which one. And then finally, we have location clashes. This shows people that are working in exactly the same place at the same time. So I've got someone coming in to do some inspection observing, and someone's doing some repairing, all in the same place. Okay, so here's my warning to show that insufficient lead time has been given for this. I can decide whether or not I want to approve, and if I'm happy with it, I can then go ahead, I can approve that permit with my password and selecting the approve button. So now we can actually see that that permit now has been approved. So because I knew that that permit was compliant to start with, because any traps would have been put in place at the contractor end, I'm now in a position where it's possible for me to just go through the permit request itself, look at any potential clashes, and then make a decision as to whether or not I can go ahead with that permit. Now, the confined space permit will have been routed to someone else. So this may be someone, for example, in health and safety. Again, it shows up the clashes, and from a health and safety perspective, I can look at those clashes and decide whether or not I think the work can be done safely. It shows me all the different issues that we saw in the other one as well, what I'm coming in to do, what's going to be done. I can go and view the RAMs if I need to, so I can double check these at this stage of the process without having to disappear off to a filing cabinet somewhere to see if I can pull out the RAMs that were sent through last year for doing this type of work. I can check it from on the screen. And here you'll have safety precautions. On your current permits, you'll have a list of safety precautions that are effectively check boxes, so that when I turn up on site, I need to go through those check boxes, and only once I've gone through those checklists am I able to actually start working if everything's in the affirmative. So again, from my perspective, I'm happy. If I wasn't happy and I wanted to reject it, I need to give a rejection. For example, I could have picked the wrong location. I said I'm doing it in the roof upper level. Obviously, the person on the other end of the phone didn't listen. It's actually in the roof lower level that I need to be. So therefore, that needs to be rejected. And it will go back to me. I would then just go in, edit it, change it to the right location, and then resubmit it, and then go through the approval process again. So if I'm happy with that, I can then approve that permit. And we're now in a position where we've got now the confined space permit approved. Finally, with HotWorks, exactly the same information on the screen. I'm now also prompted to say, do I actually want to bring into action any particular types of isolations? So here, I might want to instigate a fire systems isolation. What's going to be isolated? Fire alarm devices. These are the group that are the people that we either contract with or our internal team who can then go and do those isolations. And it could be one of 2, but these are the people we want to do it. And obviously it's active, and then obviously we'll have to switch it off afterwards. Again, for simplicity, I'll just take that out of the system. Here we've got the list of all of the different safety precautions we want to appear on a HotWorks permit. And again, if I review this and I'm happy with it, I can go straight down and I can approve that permit bundle. And that's now approved. So now in my to-do list, I now have nothing left in there. What's happening now is it's sitting in this bundle called approved permits. And there you can see these were the ones that were approved earlier on. The ones that were conflicting earlier on, they haven't been issued yet. So we can bounce these whenever, should we need to. These are the permits that I've just gone through and approved, and we're in a position where I can go and review them again, or I can print them. So when I print them, I actually can now put them into a PDF format. And what you'll see on the screen is just our standard template, but obviously we can configure these to look and feel exactly the same as your current permits that you use. It tells me associated permits, it gives me the work request number, it tells me who's coming, car registration numbers, the timings of it. So on access, I'm coming in between 9 and 5. What task is going to be done overall? Here's the information about the asbestos warning, and I can still go to the asbestos register should I need to go and check it. This shows that it was approved by a guy called Howard literally a few minutes ago, as you saw me do on the date. It hasn't yet been issued, so there's no dates in this box. This is the team leader that's going to come on site and do the work, and he's the same guy that will return it. And obviously we don't know yet who's closing out the permit. We've got a confined space permit, and here's the checklist that we wanted to appear on there. This is a checklist that can now be gone through prior to the work. And obviously we can do things like atmospheric testing because it's a confined space, etc. And then we also have gas test record sheets that can be filled in prior to the work commencing, as we already seen. And then finally we have the hot works permit. And here we've got another set of safety precautions here. This is the email that's just been sent back to me, the contractor, telling me that all of the permits have been approved. So I now know I can go in and I can now schedule that work for next Thursday. Okay, so that's the permit bundle itself. And we now have got these in a position where we're ready to issue these permits. Now, issuing permits is different to approving permits. Issuing actually locks down the whole permit system, and issuing should therefore really be done on the day, and with hot works, it should really be done at the site of work, so that I would be able to go to that site of work with the contractor, inspect the workplace, and say, yes, I'm happy, we've gone through the checklist on the hot works permit, I'm happy everything's ready, and then I can issue that permit. So access permits can be issued pretty quickly. They can be issued straight away, for example, on the morning. So now at the front desk or the site manager has a list of, these are all the permits that are coming down that may need to be worked on, will need to be worked on the day. This is who's coming, these are the people, and so forth. Should someone turn up that's not actually right, and I'm afraid I missed the opportunity there, I should have gone back and showed you that. Approved permits. If I hadn't pressed the issue button there, I could have actually gone back and, for example, if two people had turned up on the day but they weren't the people on the permit, you can actually go in and you can edit the team. So at the point up to the point of issue, the permit itself is editable. But as soon as I press that issue button, I actually have then locked it down completely. So the confined spaces permit can be issued at the time, but then, as I said before, hot works may be issued at the point of work. And everything you're seeing me do on the screen here could be done on a tablet, on a laptop, so it can be taken to the site of work and then the button pushed for issue, and that will then log times and so forth that I've actually done the issuing task itself. So what that's done now is that's now put that into what we call open permits. These are now live, this is now live work. As with any high-risk permits, you have to have the ability to suspend them. So if I've got my access permit, I've gone to the site, I'm not quite happy with what I've seen, you have the ability to suspend the permit for a period of time rather than reject it. So if I suspend it, that's what can be done. Now, if we assume the work's been completed, we get to a point where we need to go and close off. Now, with hot works in particular, you'll always have someone that will go to the place of work, often before you allow the contractor off site, to inspect the workplace and make sure that everything has been done satisfactorily and safely. If, for example, things, in my opinion, hadn't been done safely, it opens up a whole set of questionnaires here that allow us to start tagging non-compliances against the contractor. So, for example, I could say he was actually working working in the wrong place. What he was actually doing. I could photograph anything, I could upload it and so forth. I can therefore close that permit once I've done, so that one's now been closed. With regard to the other permits, the low-risk permits, you have got the ability to close all the permits in the bundle. The fact that I checked out at the front desk and both myself and Frederick disappeared off-site means that we actually are still alive, and therefore there was no issues with regard to the access permit or the confined space permit. So I'm now in a position where I could close all of those permits in the bundle without having to go and inspect those ones. High-risk ones that you do need to inspect, you need to do those on site. Other ones, you don't need to. So I now close out that permit, and now everything now has been done, and everything is now accessible through the report. So you can go into the reporting system and pull off permits from the past, inspect them. So if there were any issues that come up later on, you can still go back in there. You saw me do the closeout form. If there were any issues in there, you can still go into those closeout forms and add notes to those closeout forms, explaining that retrospectively things were found to be wrong, so you can still keep that track record against the contractor. So that's in essence has taken us through what hopefully was that simpler process with fewer risks involved in the process of losing pieces of paper or pieces of paper going astray, in a sense that it controls everything in terms of the workflow through my company, making sure that the right people have approved the jobs at the right time. If I go back to my chart at the front here I've got, for example, any permits that are overdue for issue. So things should have been issued today, but I've got 2 permits sitting in that box. I know I've got to address those. There is always the ability within the system to assign different levels of approval. So if I'm the person that's supposed to approve that confined space permit, but I'm off sick, then someone else can also have the responsibility for signing off those permits as a backup, or someone can actually have overall authority and can sign off any types of permits in situations where you're stuck for being able to get the sign-off done. So all of those issues about leave, holidays, sick leave or sick and so forth can all be covered off within the system, but putting levels of redundancy in terms of the permissions. So as I say, hopefully it's shown that there is a way of doing a much simpler process. You put a lot of emphasis back on the contractor. So maybe if we go back to that PowerPoint.